everyone! So I got thinking about this topic because of a tweet from Nate at WASD20 and a little bit of conversation we had over Twitter. So the tweet that prompted this whole thing was, confession, I've never been excited to play a female character before. Season 4 of Vikings is changing that. Which is awesome, but then I asked him, like, well, why? Why did you never think of playing a female character before? His answer was something that I think a lot of us actually run into when thinking about playing a character of another gender, is that there's something about it that doesn't feel natural or normal, which is a little problematic. And it got me thinking about, why is that? Why is it that it's harder to play a character with a different gender, but it's not hard to pretend that we're elves or dwarves or mages, stuff that, I am not a mage in my everyday life, but I like playing magic users. Ultimately, what Nate said was it felt unnatural, and he acknowledged that's probably not right, but that's how he felt. And I've noticed in my own gaming groups, most of the people I game with tend to create characters that are their own gender. Now, to be clear, I am not saying this is inherently wrong. It's just something that I've noticed. And I think that it's also something that we should be aware of as players, that it is a choice that we're making. You get to pick all these things about your character, and unless you have a GM who's being a bit of a jerk and saying you can't play a character of a different gender, it's a choice. I think those GMs probably have some underlying issues. I think there are a couple different reasonings that we as players might tend to play characters of our same gender. It could be that it simply makes it easier to relate, that you have something in common with your character, even if you're playing somebody who is vastly different. Like, I play a lot of magic users. I can't do magic. It's not real. But being able to relate to something about that character, it makes it a little bit easier to say, I have some starting baseline. Now, that could be gender, that could be, something in their personal history, just about anything. It also could just be, that's how you imagine the character. The one male character that I rolled up, for whatever reason, as I was thinking about this character, it was very clear to me this was a guy, this was a man, and I had a great time playing him. Now, the one thing I did run into with that was a lot of the other players kept forgetting and used the wrong pronouns when they were referring to my character. And I think that was just because previously I had played female characters and they looked at me and saw girl, knew they were talking about my character, but, it was a little confusing. And that's another thing that I think helps contribute to it, because I've had a couple of characters where the character I'm playing right now in our Savage Worlds, I was on the fence of, like, it could be a guy, it could be a girl. It doesn't really ultimately matter to the character creation and backstory and stuff like that. The gender hadn't been decided, and then our GM asked, well, what's her stats on this? As I was creating the character, and our GM was weighing in on what worked, what didn't for that particular campaign. So I just went, okay, my GM's going to assume the character's female, assume I'm playing a woman. It doesn't matter, I'll play a woman. I think the one reasoning that can be problematic is the reasoning of, like, it feels unnatural, or I could never relate, I could never play a character of a different gender. And I think that gets into a bunch of societal stuff of saying, like, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, they're completely different, and a man can't understand how a woman thinks, and a woman can't understand how a man thinks, which I think is total bullshit. Now, kind of back to Nate's comment, and I think at the core of it ultimately comes down to the lack of representation of women and people in color in our media. It's not hard for me to identify with a white male, because most of the books and movies and TV shows I see, those are the main characters. So it's never been hard for me to kind of slot myself into that. Now, the more and more we have kind of greater representation, the easier it's going to be to identify with people that don't exactly fit that mold. Depending on the kind of campaign you're running and what the world is like, it might be a good exercise kind of to expand yourself as a player to try playing a character of a different gender and see what it's like. Is it different? Is it just the same? You know, and some of that is going to depend on what the world you're playing in is like. Obviously, if you're playing in a world that is a very sexist, you know, setting, it's going to be different. But if it's not, you're probably going to find it's not that much different. So those are just a few of my thoughts. It was a bit, sorry if it was a bit rambly. I'm still kind of thinking it over. And I'm interested to know what your thoughts are on this kind of topic. If you've played a character of a different gender, whether it's, you know, a different gender, or heck, even playing a character that doesn't really have an identifiable gender. I played in a Thunderscape campaign, and one of the races, they were a lizard kind of race, and you couldn't really tell the difference between men and women, so that was fun and different. So yeah, let me know what you think, and if you've had experience with this down below. I'll see you next time. Bye!